morning, and honored to be here in our hometown of Chicago to tell you a little bit more about the Grassroots story. I'm going to loosely follow through some of the slides, so hopefully we can do this. You know, a lot of discussion amongst the MSOs about how they grew and you know how they define themselves, and when we're out on road shows raising money, we typically get a lot of questions. What makes you guys different from whoever, GTI, Cresco, and you know these guys are all our friends, so they're we all have similarities and differences. You know, it's interesting that there was a grouping of the prominent MSOs that came out of the Chicago market. I think, and the Illinois market is specifically what I mean. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Illinois was really the first state to run a really well thought through, heavily regulated medical program and put that in place. And then a lot of states like Maryland, Pennsylvania, et cetera, took aspects of the Illinois program and implemented them. Our team applied for licenses in 2013, 2014. Were awarded the licenses in 2014. Very interesting, at the time we were awarded dispensary licenses only. So the first 2 years of our existence, we were a dispensary only company operating in one state, Illinois. Our founders, Matt and Mitch, Matt's in the room, acted as assistant managers at our dispensaries in Illinois. We had 4 at the time, and I think that connection with the patients, and let's be clear, in Illinois, particularly in the early days of the program, these were all patients. It was very difficult to get a medical card, 90-day waiting periods, mandatory fingerprinting, background checks. Not a lot of people in line to do that unless you were really sick. So the people that came into our dispensaries were, honest to God, cancer patients, MS patients, people with real things that they needed help with, and we helped them search for solutions. It really infused a lot of the culture of the company. If you look at how we grew, we had a real focus on winning licenses in medical-oriented states, and as a result of the 62 dispensary licenses that we now control, not all of those are open yet, but of the 62 that we control, 48 we won in competitive application processes, where we took our success in Illinois, we moved it to Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Dakota. We're now in 12 states. We have made a couple of acquisitions along the way, both of individual dispensaries, and we bought a company that was the largest player in Vermont as part of our expansion. But the bulk of our growth has been internally generated, and it really infused that culture that the company was built off of, that we're not bud tenders, we're patient counselors. I mean, let's be clear. How do we define ourselves? We define ourselves as people here to really help the people that come in looking for answers. We're not, it's very very different, and I think it's a bit of a differentiator, and it's hard to put a price tag or evaluation on culture, but we believe very strongly in it. So this is just some of the highlights that I won't spend too much time on, but I'll take you through quickly. Vertically integrated in 8 of our 12 states. From being a dispensary-only operation, we won licenses for the full vertical in Maryland, Pennsylvania. That put us into the cultivation business. We formed a 50-50 joint venture on a cultivation facility in Illinois, which we later bought out our 50% partner, and now control 100% of that. And we have cultivation in 8 total of our 12 states. Just trying to remember what I wrote. Already talked about the strong focus on winning licenses. That continues to be a big focus for us. We A couple other things to highlight that we think are pretty important. A lot of discussion at this conference about capital or lack thereof around the industry. We started out financing our business by raising money for the individual state operations and separate LLCs. Last year, we went through the painful process of rolling all of those LLCs under a Delaware C Corp to create a financing entity where we could then raise money at the holdco level in anticipation of going public. We went out to raise a convert last December. If anybody remembers what was happening last December, we thought that was bad. Of course, we didn't know how bad it would feel now, but we thought it felt bad then. So it was an adverse market, and we went out to raise about $40 to $45 million. We got some early support from some of our loyal investors who'd been with us from the beginning, but it looked like it was going to be potentially a challenging process. And ultimately, we won, or were able to announce that we won 12 additional licenses while we were out marketing the round. The market started feeling better in January, February. Ultimately, we raised $90 million in a convert. Obviously very happy that we did that because that helps provide for the full funding of our growth plan as we move forward. This is a really tortured slide that started out really simple about a year ago when we had it in our deck, and then it got really complicated because it shows the timeline of the growth of the business and what did we win when, and when we were awarded more licenses, et cetera. I think the takeaway is we started in Illinois, we grew into Maryland, Pennsylvania, and then obviously we've kind of added a lot along the way and grown. This last one over to the right. In July of 2019, July 17th, 2019, we announced a definitive agreement to merge with Curaleaf. They're in 12 states, we're in 12 states. The combined entity will therefore be in 20 states and will be the largest company in the U.S. in cannabis, possibly in the world, depending on what happens up in Canada. This is sort of the current portfolio, if you want to think of it that way. The biggest piece of this, and the largest contributors, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Maryland. I expect Michigan to kind of get into the mix as we come online in Michigan later this year. Ohio, we're just starting to get open there. North Dakota, we're just starting to open there. North Dakota. We applied and won we applied and won one of the 2 cultivation licenses that were provided for under the state law, and we applied for and won 4 of the 8 dispensaries. So we have a significant market share in North Dakota. Obviously, not a big population state, but we're an important player there. This is just another representation of kind of where we're at as far as taking a look at the portfolio, which states are medical. Obviously, the adult use states, these are going to change. Illinois, as an example, on this chart is shown as no. Obviously, that's going to change in January and be a major change. This also shows kind of what we have open, what we have to be opened. As of this date, it shows that we had 26 dispensaries open. Proud to say, I think that number's 28 as of today. We started the year at 15 dispensaries open. The goal was to open 20 this year to get to 35. We're pretty far along. Actually, we're hoping that number's more like 37 by year end. But obviously a major part of the expansion of the company. As far as cultivation, probably maybe a little difficult to read, but I can give you the highlight here. We have roughly 120,000 square feet of cultivation now. We're in the process of building out another 140,000 square feet. So when fully built out, we'll have about 260,000 square feet. Just a couple comments on Illinois. A lot of people have already talked about it. It's a mad scramble, as some of you know, because some of the municipalities are still deciding whether or not they want to opt in or opt out, and we have people attending meetings with city councils and community meetings and community groups. So we're still waiting to hear on a lot of communities as to who's going to allow and who's not going to allow. In the meantime, our existing dispensaries will be allowed to immediately transition to rec and medical on January 1st, except where a city has opted out. So we already know one of ours, as an example, will be an opt-out, and we'll have to keep it as a medical dispensary. For every one we have, the law provides for one additional. So we have the ability to open 8 additional dispensaries in the state of Illinois that we will manage. So significant growth opportunity, significant attention by the team on what's going on in Illinois. We're also in the process of tripling our cultivation capacity in Litchfield, Illinois, to match the demand as well. Pennsylvania quickly became our second most important state. We have cultivation, processing, and 9 open dispensaries and the ability to open 3 more. So we'll have 12. I believe there are roughly 62 open right now, something like that. That changes every day. But to give you perspective, we have 9 of the 62 that are open, so significant footprint in Pennsylvania. We believe our flower and extracted products are the #1 rated in Pennsylvania. We're on back order at all 62 of the dispensaries. So we're very proud of what's happening there. We aggressively moved up some of our plans to expand cultivation in Pennsylvania. So we're also in the midst of a project that would triple to quadruple the amount of cultivation capacity we have in the state. Just a minute or two about kind of branding and how we set up our business, because it's a little different from how some other people think about it. We have branding really at 3 levels. Herbology is our branding for our dispensaries. It is, if you want to think of it as a modern version of an apothecary type of environment where it is a comfortable place where people come in, can come in, get counseling. We do outreach programs through the dispensaries for things like yoga, Pilates, PTSD support groups, MS support groups that we provide meeting space for in most of our dispensaries. It's part of that medical background that was infused through the real founding of the company. Separately from the herbology name, Grassroots is the high end of our branding portfolio. So think of it, if we were a vineyard, this would be the estate bottled stuff, meaning the top of the food chain, best stuff we have, and for both flower and extracted products. And then we have branding below that. May is a health and wellness brand that we're looking at coming out with in both the THC and CBD market. So these are some pictures of sort of the new design, which we started implementing earlier this year. So for the 20 build-outs this year, this is kind of what you're looking at. If you've ever had the opportunity to stop by any of our dispensaries, you should definitely do that. Or we can help set that up. This is just some pictures of the branding and what we're doing on the Grassroots side. Again, this is the high end of our product line. Just to talk a minute about the research side, and again, this somewhat follows from the story I told at the beginning about how we founded the company and some of the basic beliefs in the company. I mentioned that we bought an asset in Vermont, which is they control one of the 2 cultivation licenses, 4 of the 10 dispensary licenses, a testing lab. They've got a CBD for hemp company as well, and one of the reasons why they got the early licenses is that the ownership was with a couple of medical researchers at the University of Vermont. University of Vermont happens to be one of the few universities that really sanctions, real research into cannabinoids, CBD, THC, entourage effect, genetics, a lot of interesting stuff. So it was pretty clear that they were really passionate about it, and we realized pretty early on there was a good cultural fit. One of the things they wanted out of the deal was for us to consider whether or not we would, support some research they were doing and basically partner with them to use them as the research arm for the company and to help in some formulations and put some science behind all the anecdotal things that we all know about cannabis, right? It helps you sleep, it helps you do this. Why? How much? How do you dose? So we're very proud. We've got about a $900,000 commitment over 3 years to fund research in tandem with them. We have the ability to use them to help in some formulations and some other things. They've got some really interesting stuff online. If you ever want to check out their stuff online, there's actually a class you can take through the University of Vermont. In fact, a couple different classes online on cannabis that Monique Henry of the CASE team runs. Just to talk about data a little bit, this came up yesterday in a panel I spoke on. Data is something that, because we were growing so fast and we were trying to build out the company, that we really, probably just were running too fast to really focus on how we use all the data that we were getting. And when I mean data at the cultivation facilities, data at the retail level, who's buying what. And we really, what's their demographic, who comes in the afternoon on Tuesdays versus who comes in on Saturday morning, what are people looking for, what's the feedback we're getting, we had tremendous amounts of data, but it wasn't really being used in functional ways. And there was a big push within the company. We actually brought in an outside, data consultant, there are guys who actually help you crunch data and figure out meaningful ways to use it for marketing and for internal efficiency purposes. And it's become a major focus of the company. We're kind of proud of where we're going on this one. We think we're probably ahead of where some of the other guys are on how to capture this data and how to study it. So just a couple quick comments on the numbers. So 2017, really Illinois only, more or less for revenue, $12 million. In 2018, we brought online Maryland, Pennsylvania. We also had some revenue in Nevada. And we might have had actually a tiny bit of revenue from Vermont because we closed the deal in December. If you look at 2019, this is through the second quarter, we had roughly $32 million of revenue. We had a slight EBITDA loss. Proud to say that we inflected in the third quarter of this year to positive EBITDA. That was always our plan, that we would get to positive EBITDA by third quarter. And then from there, just ramp, continuing positive EBITDA from there. Growth rate year on year, just to give you a perspective, or quarter on quarter is probably the best, actually. So first quarter this year, we did 11 million and change. Second quarter this year, we did 19 million and change of revenue. This quarter, we haven't sent out our letter to investors yet, but you should expect it to be sort of 27 million and change. So we're continuing to see that heavy organic growth rate as we bring on additional dispensaries and as the growth rate within individual dispensaries continues to accelerate. Just a little bit of it. This is just the revenue segmentation. If you pulled this up for other MSOs, this would look different. So it's just something to highlight. As an example, Cresco would be 60% cultivation and 40% retail. We're heavily based toward retail brands, et cetera. We hate to use the phrase that cultivation is a necessary evil, but we do have long-term concerns that it'll be marginalized, and we're very attentive to how we size our buildings and how we think about getting our capital out of the buildings before what may be legislative changes or other competitive changes that makes cultivation a bit more agriculture-like, if you will. This is just a snapshot of our cap table. Only thing, the things I would highlight here are that, our founders own roughly 42% of the company. I think that's really important as far as, people really having skin in the game and being all in. From our early legacy holders, hold about another 40% of the company. Our convertible holders that we brought in earlier this year, fully diluted, would represent most of the rest. We've got some employee options and some other small stuff. So just a few quick comments. I'll wrap it up relatively quickly here, but if you think about what were our thoughts on 2019, how do we win in 2019, and how do we get together as a team and really think about what should be our focus? So execution. We view this as the most important issue within the company, bringing in people and really executing, given all the the growth challenges we had to manage. Bringing online 3 new cultivation centers. That's a major undertaking to get those ramped, to build out your team on the wholesale side, and to really get those to function the way they're supposed to function. Major expansion of 3 of our cultivation centers, already mentioned: Illinois, Maryland, Vermont, and Pennsylvania. So actually 4 of them. A lot of things that we had on the plate as far as the brand architecture and what we do on the branding side. Lisa Hurwitz, who's not here today, but is our Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Growth Officer, has just done an incredible job of helping us define what we want to do on the branding and marketing side. Implement a data-driven culture. Already talked about that a couple slides ago, but super important to us. And continue to grow our footprint sensibly, not by overpaying for acquisitions, but again with a primary focus on organic growth, supplemented with M&A where it makes sense. So this is just a little bit about the team. A lot of people in the room probably know Mitch Kahn, our CEO, who's been around the industry and is a larger-than-life character and a great guy to have as a leader. Mitch Darren's actually in the room, our COO, and I have nicknamed him Il Postino, which is the mailman in Italian, because he's the guy in the company that actually gets things done and delivers. Steve Wiseman, who really, one of our co-founders, he has been the absolute genius behind our application process, winning licenses, navigating the regulatory path. We would definitely not be here without him. Lisa Hurwitz, I mentioned a moment ago, used to run worldwide marketing for Kimberly-Clark, and before that, did brand building and other things for P&G and some other major CPG companies, and really was a game change as far as how we thought about that part of our business. You obviously know me, Andy Cohen, who runs Maryland and Pennsylvania, absolutely a super important part of the team. Josh Joseph, who used to have hair before he started in cannabis. I'm only kidding. But he runs our real estate group and also gets heavily involved on the M&A side. And Tally, who we brought on to run our stores and really to beef up what we're doing on supply chain. Going from 15 to 35 stores, major step change in how you start thinking about supply chains and a lot of other challenges to your business. So, this is just kind of a recap slide. I think I've mentioned everything on here. Very excited about the future in our core states and, what we're doing to build. Probably most excited about some of the upgrades in the team that we've made. We went from 400 employees in January to 700 employees today. That's obviously massive growth to manage. And doing that while you keep your cultural integrity as a company and as a team is super important. And, I think, one of the things that we're most proud of. So with that, I don't know if do we have any time for questions, or do we even do questions on this or no? Yeah. Anybody have a question? Hi. Oh, you were waving. Okay. Hi.
Who's got a question?
Oh, here we go.
Hi, can you tell us about your technology platforms, how you are gathering data or tracking your seed to sell? Are you using CRMs or ERPs, and maybe some of the lessons learned?
Well, I'm far from the expert in the company on some of those things, so I'll keep it a bit more generalized. So we're in 12 states, and you know, we have certain states we can't pick our provider. You know, we have to, they mandate who we use. And I don't want to be disparaging to anyone, but the software that has been available to the cannabis space in general for both seed to sale, POS, and all the other tracking systems that you need to run, you know, normal retail supply chain businesses has been horrible in general. We tend to talk about the tallest midget in the room when we talk about, you know, who we like versus who we don't like. You know, it's a relative term. We don't really like any of them, but we like, you know, like a couple a little bit better. So not to put a plug in for anybody, but we do use LeafLogix for a decent swath of our business, and they have been a reliable partner for us and have done some good things. Having said that, you know, a lot of these guys are coming up with improvements in real time, and you know, I met with somebody yesterday, and you know, they were telling me about a lot of great things that they're adding to their platform, and you know, so I would expect that you'll see additional investment and spending by companies to try to address the needs that we have and provide better solutions. So I think it'll get better. I think it'll get better and better. So hopefully that's helpful. At any rate, I'm around the rest of the day if anybody wants to talk, but thank you very much.